the golf course, and I would be there all day. They would give me $10. I would get dropped off with a small group of kids, sun up to sundown, my lunch, Chinese chow mein chicken noodles in a to-go box, and chocolate milk. Doesn't sound very appetizing now, but that filled me up. And I was there at the course the whole time. And then I think it evolved into tournaments and trophies and doing that kind of stuff. And then for you guys, we're talking about social, we're talking about exercise, we're talking about being able to communicate, to be a part of a community and enjoy other people. And then we're talking about the challenge of the game. What can we get out of it? We don't want to stop learning something. It's awesome, I think, when I see people as adult learners just go pick up something. I'm going to learn, I know woodworking is big, and I know there's a new phase going on right now. It seems like the repair phase, right? So a lot of people, especially in their 20s, 30s, 40s, when the vacuum cleaner breaks, they just go get a new vacuum cleaner because it's usually cheap. But what I'm finding is people are learning how to fix these. So they're having fix-it classes where you actually break apart a really old vacuum cleaner and you fix it. So anyway, your adult learning is important, and in my world, there's 5 elements of that. So that's what we're going to start with. So if you hold up your hand, everybody hold up your hand, there's 5 elements, right? The first element, which is the most important element, is the heart level element, the emotional level element, right? For you in general, it becomes something that you, on a deep level, want to be out there, whether it's an emotional connection with a person, a friend, an environment, a sport, whatever it is. That's an emotional or spiritual level thing that you can work on. The next one is mental, right? So mentally, what you're going to do is you're going to learn things. You're going to learn, why do I hit better off of Bermuda grass or bent grass? How do I understand how the wind is affecting my ball? When you get club fit, how do I understand how it is that this is making me play better? So mentally is different from the emotional level. This is more like a psychological element, a heart level element. This is a mental element, which kind of encompasses anything you have to think about, your intellect, your golf IQ, right? The next one is your physical, which is your physical body. Dealing with injuries, dealing with lack of flexibility, dealing with lack of stamina, dealing with strength, dealing with power, whatever it is, that's your physical body. The next one is your technique, your form. How do I that's the coordination component, right? How do I technically with my swing get better, with my putting stroke, whatever it is, that's your technique. And the final one is your equipment. I call it mechanical. The reason why I call it mechanical is because it encompasses anything that is, it's a tool, anything that you bring with you. The shoes that you choose to wear, the pants that you choose to wear, the shirt that you choose to wear. Do you use a GPS watch? Do you use a laser rangefinder? What type of grips do you have on your clubs? What type of shaft do you use? What's the lie angle of your clubs? So these are mechanical pieces that encompass the sport. When you go play soccer, you wear a soccer outfit, and it's probably going to be stretchy, right? Something you can run in, breathable, cleats, shin pads, and you have a soccer ball in a field. Golf, we have all these other things. We got 14 different clubs just to start with, if you're playing with the legal limit. Then we got all kinds of different shoes. Do you wear them with a flat sole? Do they have a supportive sole? Are they squishy? Are they breathable on top? There's a ton of different things that can actually be affecting your game. So the reason why I bring that up, and I call that my trim 5, right? So the reason why it's called trim 5 is if I could trim strokes off of all 5 of those different areas, maybe psychologically, making you have a little bit better outlook on what you're doing, right? When you're missing your putts, psychologically, if we can give you some tools, it'll say, hey, you know what? I'm not worried about that. Because I guarantee part of the reason why you're missing those putts is a psychological reason, right? You've already confessed, like you're already messed up in the head about the putting, right? You shared it in front of the group.
I don't think about the rest of my game. And when I go and hit the ball, I don't think about a thing.
Yep.
But when I have that putter in my hand,
Yep.
it's totally different. And
Well, and especially if you hit a really nice shot into the green and it's close to the pin and you're feeling like this should be a reward, I should be able to make a birdie or a par or save that bogey or whatever it is, you're already anxious about it because you're thinking, gosh, everybody else seems to make these and I'm missing, right? So there's a psychological component in there. Well, maybe the reason why you're missing those putts isn't entirely psychological. Maybe mentally you haven't been trained on how to read the greens. You don't have the IQ, the golf IQ on green reading. That's an IQ thing or an intelligence thing within the sport, right? Physically, maybe there's something going on with your body, whether it's an elbow injury, knee injury, that's putting your posture in a position where now your physical body is inhibiting the stroke. Maybe it's a technical thing, your grip position, your hand position, the way you move your shoulders and arms, the way you move. Maybe you're moving your knees too much instead of keeping them still and just moving the shoulders, right? So when you look at it, you don't want to immediately pigeonhole your issue into one of those areas. So the reason why I talk about those 5 is because the best thing that you can possibly do in your analysis when you're watching PGA Tour TV, run it through those 5. Right? So separate the analysis component or portion of your mind into 5 different categories. Because when you're watching a PGA Tour event or an LPGA Tour event, we've seen them all, the announcers, they like to mention all 5 of those. They don't break them into trim 5 ideas like I do, but they mention them all. Oh, it looks like he's choking. It looks like, uh-oh, the wheels are coming off. You can tell his swing is getting shorter. Well, then one announcer might say, well, his swing is getting shorter because the wind is picked up and he's holding his follow-through shorter because he's trying to drive it under the wind. Another announcer might see that follow-through and go, ooh, he's holding off his finish. Mentally, he must be struggling because now he's guiding the shot, right? So what's really funny to me about any announcer, any analyst, is it's their opinion, and what they're definitely not doing in a lot of cases is asking the player, hey, right? Hideki, who just won this last tournament. He's won 4 of his last 5 tournaments, right? Hideki Matsuyama. He started struggling a little bit toward the end. I think he had an 8-stroke lead and then maybe ended up winning by 4. But what's interesting is analysis is usually, if you think about it, let's call it judgment. We got spouses in here, right? So let's call it judgment. So a lot of times when you judge something in someone else, a lot of times it's something that you either do in yourself or something that you're not happy about with what you're doing. So when you hear an analyst, especially someone like a Johnny Miller talking about a swing and he's talking about choking, he's talking about stuff, well, that's because he felt that. So he's assuming that follow through, that finish, has nothing to do with wind. It's got nothing to do with the style of shot that he's trying to hit. It has everything to do with a mental thing. Well, the analyst is trying to put himself in the player's shoes. Well, when he puts himself in that player's shoes, he's going inward on himself and saying, this is what I may be feeling. And when I was struggling, when I was feeling the nerves, I started holding it off. So then he broadcasts it out to everybody, and he has to have an opinion, and it's entertaining. But when you're looking at that on yourself and you're trying to figure it out, you're the only one that can figure it out. So here's another very, very useful tip. You are your own best coach. You do have people in your circles that can help you, but a lot of times that information that you're getting, it's really not worth much. Usually say you get what you pay for, right? So if you're getting free tips from spouses, friends, siblings, whoever it is, it's always well-meaning. It's always from the heart. It's always, hey, I think I can help you. You appear to be doing this, right? But the biggest thing that happens is, let's say, for example, you hit a shot and you happen to hit a shot and let's say it goes to the right. And you do that after you follow through. One of your friends is going to say, oh, you lost your balance. That's why you hit it over there. And then what are you going to go, oh, balance. I lost my balance. So then what you're going to do is you're going to be thinking on the next swing, well, what's balance? What did I lose? How do I do that better, right? Well, what the person suggested you did was based on the fact that after the ball was flying, you took a step and maybe there was an appearance that you lost your balance. Well, guess what? If you had striped that right down the middle and done that, they wouldn't have said anything, right? If you crushed it right down the middle of the fairway, what are they going to say? Oh, you hit that so good because you lost your balance. You should lose your balance all the time. If they're joking around, they may, right? But so what you have to do is be your own best coach. So make sure the information that you hear, whether it's from me today or anybody else, you always have to filter it through your own knowledge base, right? Your own history. So if you finish and you do that, and someone says, oh, you lost your balance. Well, maybe you didn't lose your balance. Maybe you knew you accidentally stood on a half-buried pine cone, right? And you didn't know if you could move it because that was a rule of golf, and you didn't know if it was embedded or whatever, and I don't know if I can move it. It's not going to bother me that much. I'll just stand on it. Well, then you can turn to that person and say, oh, thank you. But in your mind, you're going, buried pine cone, not balance, right? So there's a few rules on any way you're learning this game. Run them through those 5. That's your trim 5. Emotionally, psychologically, was that an issue? Really, was it? Was it a psychological issue? Or am I starting to notice a pattern in my mental ability to read that putt? Every time I miss on the low side. I'm not reading enough break. It's not a psychological issue at all. I don't know how to read greens. I need to go get a lesson on how do I read greens, right? Or is it a physical issue? Every time I miss a putt, I feel like a yip or a flinch or something. Maybe there's something going on in your hands, which could be psychological, could be physical. So my point is, run it through those 5, right? And we'll make sure you write those down, jot them down in your phone, take some notes or whatever. But psychological, mental, physical, technique or technical, and mechanical, right? So if you think of those things, what I do with all my college players and my amateur players is I say, guys, before you pick up the phone and say, hey, coach, I want to tell you how all the good and bad things that happened in my tournament this week, I say, write down in each of those 5 categories what you were thinking, how you were responding, how your body reacted in those 5 categories. Because then I can look at it, take that wisdom approach, I can take that 10,000-foot look at it and go, yeah, you know what? You might have been feeling this way or this way, but it was actually because of this. So then I can redirect them and say, look, this is what you need to focus on, versus what they think, which then takes them off on a rabbit trail of analysis, right? So you guys can all empathize with that. So analyze it with the 5. Be super filtering, right, through your own history. You have years of playing the game. Any new piece of information from me or anybody else, friends especially, don't just let it jump right in there and add to your reservoir of information. You need to filter it out through there, filter out the impurities, and only keep the information that's really, really going to help you. And you're your own best coach, right? So what we're going to do, I've been chatting for a little bit, having a little conversation. What I'm going to have you guys do is stand up. We're going to swing this saber a little bit. So come on over here in this open space. I've got 3 different sizes. I'm just going to be completely judgmental here, and I'm going to give the ladies the slightly smaller one. And I'm going to give the guys the slightly heavier one because they look buff to me. Okay. So what we have in the sabers, we've got 3 sabers. We have a kid's version or a beginner level version, which is this one, and it actually speaks to an entire pre-shot or swing routine on here. Your saber has on it, the words that are written on it are for ball placement. But what we're going to do right now, since we've just been sitting, is we're just going to kind of get the blood moving a little bit, all right? So what we're going to do is do what I call the spin. So let's see. Jacques, why don't you take this open space right here? Right there. Yeah, perfect. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is what I call the spin. Now, when you grab a saber, when you grab a training tool, and you haven't hit a golf ball, your main thing is, number one, from a mental and a physical standpoint, is you need blood flow, right? So I think maybe, was it Jill that mentioned losing focus, or was that you? I think you mentioned that when you're out playing, you don't play competition, but you feel like when you're out playing, even socially, that you get to a point where you kind of lose a little focus, and you know, oh, maybe that's why I shot the 92 instead of the 87. Paying attention, right? So mentally, the brain needs oxygen. So a lot of times when we're out playing golf, we get to a point somewhere in the round, and usually it's somewhere after 9 holes, somewhere it's between 10 and 14, where we start to lose a little focus, right? Well, what happens in that case is we're just been plodding along. We really haven't been exerting ourselves. Usually in the beginning of the round, we stretched a little bit, we walked a little bit, our mind is active. We have to check in the shop. Where do we get our cart? I got to get my coffee. I got to use the restroom, whatever it is. So mentally you're kind of excited and you're ready to do something new. You go, you play, and you've been playing along okay, and then you get to a point where it becomes a little bit monotonous through that 10, 11, 12, and then the switch gets flipped at the other end, 16, 17, 18. Now you're thinking, oh, I'm almost done. I'm going to be meeting a friend for lunch, or we're going to be doing this. So what happens mentally is your intention or your attention starts to change. And in that middle area, it's very difficult to just start thinking about stuff. Oh, I'm going to think about this and this to get yourself mentally back in it. But what you need is oxygen and blood flow. So once you start moving, anything, walking, what we're going to do is some twisting. Anything that starts to get that blood pumping through your heart and into your brain is going to get you to start thinking smarter. The oxygen is in your brain, so you're going to be more in tune with what you're doing. So this is what I call the spin, right? So what you're going to do is take your saber, put it out in front of you. One of the easiest ways to kind of start getting some blood flow going is just raise your arms, right? Your arms are like, uh-oh, blood just went all the way down my arm. Now I'm going to bring it back down, right? So this is just a stretch, and if you want to, you can take your arms, kind of start pulling them back a little bit. What I'm going to have everybody do is kind of hold out to the end of the saber for me, and then what I'm going to have you just kind of lower it. Any popping and cracking in the shoulders, right? Okay. So what we're doing is we're just going through a nice little exercise, right? Right. So as I go around the room, I can tell that Bob probably had a little bit of a left shoulder injury at some point. Jacques got a tight upper back, right? Jill maybe had a little bit of a right shoulder issue possibly at some point. And you're pretty good. Vicky's pretty good too. Am I close on the arms and shoulders? Right? So how do I know that? Well, if you look at each other, Vicky's doing great, so she's probably a better specimen. Bob, see how he's got his arms a little bit crooked. Well, why is that? Well, there's an impingement. There's an issue, right? Jill, as she moves the saber down to the side, that's better, right? It now moved like this. But she was moving it, right? Why is that? Well, there's a flexibility, there's a compensation in there. Well, guess what? If you're moving around and you're not having ideal, we'll call it ideal flexibility, well then, guess what? You're not going to be able to produce what you see on the PGA Tour. So let's just cut that out right now, right? Because a PGA Tour player can take one of these sabers and just boom, 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 and drop it down. You see where I'm dropping it to my shoulders? Right here. Now, Jacques, when he does it, he's like, oh, I don't know if I can get this past the back of my head, right? And then not only can they take this, they can kind of, be careful, don't pop anything out of place here, right? So, if you have shoulder flexibility, good for you. If you don't, that's fine. We're going to have to work around whatever that is, right? So that's just one way to be able to figure that out.
Can you work on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and so a simple way, right, for Jacques to be able to do that is you want to do it with the least number. You don't want to push it hard. You want to do it in a subtle way, right? So if you take your position where you are and you go, okay, well, how do I do this, right? Well, let's say you go to a wall at home, static, you go to a wall at home, and you take your arms and you start rolling them like this, right? And what you're doing is you're increasing that mobility, right? So what you have in your body is basically stability and mobility. Think of it as stiff and flexible, loose. Stability also accompanies strength. Something that's strong and tight, it's usually what happens. Something that's weak and loose, it's on the other side, right? So if Jacques has been developing his front of his body, it's pulling all the muscles into the front. So anything that you've ever done over the years with chest exercises, rolling your shoulders in, whatever you've done, push-ups, bench press, any exercise like that, it's building up the front. And what you have to do is be able to open up and pull everything back. All right? Oh yeah, perfect. Thank you. We're going to need that. We're exercising in here.
Hot yoga.
Yeah. It's warm in here. That's why we're keeping that door closed, I think. All right, so that would be just a simple way for me as a coach to kind of look around, right? Now I don't know if you can you guys see anything on me if I just go like this? Can you see it? Anything if it's because I'm not trying to focus on going straight up and down at all. Do you see? Does it look symmetrical? Does it look okay? See?
I think it does.
See anything?
Your right shoulder.
A little different. Mm-hmm.
Slower.
Yeah, exactly, right? So right back here in my right shoulder, not always, but sometimes like that rotator cuff, that shoulder area gets a little bit tight on me, right? And so what I'm looking to do is create fluidity, right? You have the ability to move with mobility easier. If you're fluid and you have strength and then you can coordinate those two things, then there you go, now you're on track. Right? So once we've done that, another good one, you can do anything you want to do with your legs, right? So you can use the saber as a balancing tool. So I usually, if I'm moving my left leg, I'm balancing with my right hand. So go ahead and lift up your left leg and balance here. Now right away what you're going to find is, I don't think I can do this for very long. I don't think I can hold this level for very long, right? Because what you're doing pretty good again, but what I'm seeing in Bob is your back starts to go back, right? So what you're doing, guy, I'm picking on you today, right? But what you're doing is you're having to isolate the muscles to be able to hold that in position. And what will happen is as you get weaker, is you'll do it, you'll hold that knee up, and you'll be like, how am I doing? All right, because now you're starting to tap in, and that's the most, you can set your leg down. That's one of the most amazing things to me is how the mind will simply compensate, right? It's very, very difficult to isolate what it is that you need to work on because your body will move. It's like what John Brinkus was saying yesterday. He said when he went to analyze, say, for example, a football, a quarterback throwing, where does the energy come from? Does it come from the feet? Does it come from how strong they are in their upper body or their chest? So everybody's going to compensate around that. So let's do the other leg. Let's pull it up and hold it. Try to get it flat if you can. Yeah, so it's tight, tough, injury, a bum knee. There you go. Yeah.